This is one scary story from my subscribers that was sent in by an anonymous user. They warned me not to go. I wish I listened. I had just turned 21 and graduated university with a degree in archaeology. My best friend and I were working for a small company doing, of all things, land surveying. It was boring but paid well. The plan was to work there until we got bored or until we could find something better. One of our first jobs was on an old Victorian estate near the coast. We were to walk around the perimeter checking for Japanese knotweed, which is apparently bad because it's non-native and can damage property. We'd already been walking for hours and had yet to find any. So when we rounded a corner of the house and saw a field full of it, we were relieved. It was like a kid in a candy store. We spent the entire day taking pictures of every single plant and marking their location on our GPS devices. At about 4 p.m., we decided to take a break and have some snacks. As we sat down on a nearby hill overlooking the field, I told my friend that I didn't think we'd get any more jobs if this was the way we worked. We had so many pictures and needed to start analyzing them instead of just snapping more. He agreed. It was then that we noticed a line of trees along the other side of the field. They were quite tall and imposing, not the usual trimmed hedges that surrounded the rest of the property. The only way to get to them was through the field, which was filled with waist-high weeds and Japanese knotweed. Curiosity got the better of us and my friend said, "Let's go check it out." I thought we should probably get back to work, but he insisted, saying that it would only take 5 minutes. I eventually caved in. We walked across the field, pushing through the plants. The sun was setting fast and I started getting really nervous. I felt like we were being watched, and every time I turned around, I saw a bunch of dried-up corn stalks swaying in the wind. I told my friend that I wanted to go back and start sorting through the photos. He replied, "Okay, let's go," and took off running. I yelled at him to wait up, but he kept going. After a minute or two, he stopped and turned around, and I noticed that he wasn't smiling anymore. His face was pale and his eyes wide. I asked what was wrong, and he told me to come over to where he was standing. I couldn't see anything unusual. There was nothing in front of him except the road. I looked down the road and saw a pair of headlights coming our way. Then they disappeared again. I asked, "What is it?" But before my friend could reply, the car came back into view. I knew that the house had security cameras set up around the perimeter, but the road was supposed to be the blind spot. I stepped out into the middle of the road to try to flag the car down, but it slowed and then sped past me without stopping. I ran back to my friend and we hid in the weeds. We both knew that we shouldn't be out there and that whoever was driving past us wasn't looking for us. After about 10 minutes, we decided to run towards the house. We were close enough that we could easily sprint the rest of the way. Once inside, we locked the door behind us and waited for our breathing to calm down. We were both shaky and silent for a while. Eventually, my friend broke the silence and said that we should go back out and look for the car. I told him that there was no way I was leaving that house after dark, especially not alone. He didn't say anything and just stared at the floor. He finally said, "I'm going to call the police." I begged him not to. I explained that I didn't want to get into trouble with the company or worse, get arrested for trespassing. And besides, what would we even tell the cops? A car drove past us and we were scared. He sat down on the floor and hung his head. I don't know how long we sat there, but eventually I started calming down. I went over to my friend and asked if he was okay. He didn't say anything. He was still staring at the floor. I tried to put a hand on his shoulder, but he flinched and looked up at me with terror in his eyes. He stood up and ran outside, yelling for help. I immediately panicked. Had I done something wrong? Was he hurt? Did he need help? I ran after him. I found him kneeling by the car and frantically waving his hands and screaming for someone to call 999. I was terrified. I asked what happened, but he didn't respond. He just kept screaming. That's when I noticed that there was blood all over his clothes. I don't remember much of what happened next. I called the emergency services and the police arrived first. They were followed by paramedics and then an ambulance. I've never seen so many sirens going at once. My friend was taken away in the ambulance and the police officers began asking me questions. The police officer knelt down to my level and said, "Do you know why your friend ran into the road?" I told him that I didn't. All I knew was that we were hiding in the weeds and then he started screaming. The officer nodded. "Did you see a car?" I nodded. "Was anyone else in the car?" I shook my head. "Can you describe the car?" I told him that it was a normal-sized sedan, maybe a Ford or a Chevy. The officer stood up and said, "Thank you. I'll ask you some more questions later. For now, why don't you go home and get some sleep?" I nodded dumbly and just stared at my feet. I didn't feel like I could speak. I heard from the police about a week later. They hadn't found the car or driver, but they did have a lead on a possible suspect. They believed that my friend may have misidentified who was driving the car and that it might have been a case of mistaken identity. They also said that they would keep me informed and to call them right away if I remembered anything else. I heard from them a few days later. They told me that the man that they suspected was driving the car had an airtight alibi and ruled him out as a suspect. On top of that, my friend's injuries were serious enough that he wouldn't be able to testify if needed. Because of this, the police basically closed the case and left me with more questions than answers. To this day, I don't know what happened to my friend or what happened on that road. I haven't been able to bring myself to go back and see if I can find any answers. I recently moved away from my hometown and haven't spoken to anyone from my old life, including the people at the company I worked for. I have no idea if they're still there or if they ever found out what happened to me and my friend. I do wonder sometimes if it was a hit and run and my friend saw something he wasn't supposed to. Maybe there was a drug deal or something shady happening on that road and somebody wanted to scare us away. I don't know. All I do know is that whatever happened on that road that night, I hope it was just a case of mistaken identity because the alternative is just terrible to think about. And that was the end of the scary story. If you like scary stories, stay tuned for more content. Also, new content is being added all the time, so there's always something new to watch. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.